Hey folks, gas lock on my chair is broken. So that's why I kept shrinking. But you just got to roll with it sometimes. You just got to go with it and see what's going to happen. Let's bring down that light a little bit. That is intense. All right, hope you guys are having a fun day. We're going to do some revisions. Let me save my Appleton document. I don't know where all the clicking and stuff was coming from. I don't know if that came across on the stream or not. But I'll listen to it later, and if it's there, whatever. It's part of the aesthetic, I guess. So anyway, what are we going to call this? What's today's date? Tomorrow's St. Patrick's Day. Today's the 16th, right? 3/16/24. All right. And we have a record of the performance. Okay. Fun way to start, because we were going to start at 6:45, so we will roll with it like that. Okay, I'm going to bring this light down because it is intense. I'm a TP. I'm a wigwam. I'm a TP. I'm a wigwam. Relax, man. You're too tense. Midnight in Norway. Wow. Happy St. Patrick's Day way over in Norway. All right, we're just going to hop into it. Let's pull up the document. So we finished writing this the other week. Now we get to do a little bit of dealing with the revision part of writing a book. So this is it's a novella, maybe, right? It's like 15,000 words. So when you are writing a book, there's 4 phases. I've talked about this many times. Phase 1, planning. We did that the first stream. Phase 2, drafting. That's what we did on all the other streams. Phase 3 is revision. We shouldn't have to do too much because we did the planning. We did the planning stage, so not too much to do for the revision stage. And phase 4 is publication, and that's going to be preparing your files, making sure there's not, typographical errors here or there, formatting errors, and then putting it out for the public to see. So for the publication part, I'm actually going to jump ahead with that and put it on Kindle Vela, because I think that would be a cool way to show you how that platform works. I don't think it's a very good platform. So I don't think it's really worth most people's time to do Kindle Vela, but I'll show you how to do it anyway, because who knows, someone might want to do it. And then for whatever reason with me, they give me money every month, or not every month, but some months they give me money if I put something on Kindle Vela, even if no one reads it. And pretty much none of my audience is interested in reading things on Vela. The platform's dominated by authors who have really big lists and audiences that they can kind of get them to go buy something on Kindle Vela, which gives them slightly better profit margins. And at that point, I'm like, why not just sell it yourself? Sell it direct on your own site and keep all the money if you can manage to get people to go to a platform like Vela that's kind of dead already. It was kind of dead in the water when it launched. And I think I remember hearing that whoever came up with it, the creative director of it, got promoted pretty much right when it was launching. So it just was kind of ship without a captain for a while in business terms. And that's kind of how it ended up. Here we go. So there's this. Let's make a little bit of a list. I'm maybe going to open up a new document just to make a list of things we need to do in this step. So first one is we actually need a title. So we got to come up with the title for this story, for this novella. It has to be something that will, this is kind of pointing towards the publication phase of it. But it has to kind of trigger the right genre and all that kind of stuff. So we need it to basically have a good genre trigger as well as a content trigger. So we need both of those things to be a little bit apparent with the title. It has to kind of fit in the fantasy genre. Since this is a fantasy horror story, I guess, it has some horror elements to it. Have you seen the new Dune movies? I saw the first one and I did a review on it. Maybe you didn't watch it. That's okay. I thought it was okay. I really do not care for Denis Villeneuve's style, but I think Dune is maybe the one example where his style probably fits the work in question. I did not think the first Dune movie was a good adaptation. There were many things about it I didn't like, and I think the worst part about it was the casting. By far and away, the worst part was the casting. It was terribly miscast almost throughout, especially compared to, say, David Lynch's Dune. And I think that's probably the complaint from number 2, because you have Zendaya as Chani, who's apparently a girl boss. So I haven't gone and seen it. And the main reason is not that, like, so there's 2 reasons. First of all, movie reviews, unless I'm trashing them and people out there already hate them, don't make me any money. So it's a cost for me to go see a movie. The main reason I was able to review the first Dune movie is because it was on HBO during the pandemic. So I could watch it at home on my OLED TV, with like good sound and stuff, and be able to pause it. For me to go to the cinema and sit through like a 2 or 3 hour movie requires like 5 hours of my time. And I have to be completely by myself. So I have to convince my wife to watch the kids for 5 hours, which, she'll do, but it's not something I want to do. Why doesn't your wife come with you? Because we don't want to pay $100 for babysitting to go see a movie, especially one that my wife is not interested in. And the truth is, my wife is not remotely interested in any movies that I like to watch. Our crossover for movies is so narrow that it might as well not exist, really. She's just not interested in serious movies. That's who she is. Okay. So yeah, she's not interested in seeing that. So for me to go see the new Dune movie would be a huge suck of my time for virtually no benefit to anyone. I don't think there's very many people who care about me reviewing movies anymore. And I don't think that, and that's by the numbers because YouTube doesn't show them to people and my subscribers don't really watch those videos. So that's fine. It's not a big deal, right? If I'm looking at movies compared to every other kind of art that I prefer to engage with, it's pretty low for those reasons that it just takes, especially going to the cinema. I really, now that I have kids and that I have a good TV and all this kind of stuff, I really don't like going to the cinema. I used to have a projector set up at home, like with a home theater years ago, before HD was like a thing. And I loved it. And I loved seeing movies really big and detailed. And I loved sitting and watching movies, but it just doesn't go well with a family, right? It just doesn't work. So for me to go to the cinema is a huge sacrifice. And chances are, especially if it's a movie like Dune that I'm pretty sure I'm not going to really fully enjoy. I have zero hype for it based on the first movie and the director and what he said about it and how bad of an adaptation the first movie was. Like, I just am not interested in it. I know maybe it's a cultural moment in pop culture is dying anyway. So like, it's kind of this little blip on an otherwise downward trajectory of people just being in their own little spheres, not caring about movies and stuff like that. It's cool that somebody made yet another adaptation of the first Dune book, but do I think there will be a Dune Messiah adaptation? The answer is no. In fact, I'm sure they will never adapt any other movies in the series because why would they? No one will like the movies. We got to be real. Got to be real about it. The truth is that most of the Dune sequels are just not going to interest most people. The first Dune book is really good. I like some of the Dune sequels, especially like God Emperor of Dune, but your average person is going to find them really unsatisfying because they're just really weird. That's why I like God Emperor of Dune. It's a super weird book with like the Leto Atreides II is like the sandworm god, and he's trying to get somebody that can kill him so that prescience can't detect them. Somebody who's invisible to prescience is kind of his idea. It's weird, but it's cool. And it's just got a lot of monologues. It just wouldn't translate well to a movie. And I even think the first book, I think, is borderline unadaptable anyway. And I say that because there's been 3 adaptations, and none of them have really nailed it. I think there was that sci-fi series adaptation, which I don't even really remember well, because it came out so long ago. This cat keeps wanting to get on my stuff. Go play, cat. Go do something else. There you go. Can I sit on your synthesizer? Did you pay a lot of money for it? Okay, good. Yeah. So I don't really like going to the movies. If I were a completely single person or my kids weren't around all the time and I didn't have to deal with them, maybe I'd like going to the cinema more. I do like being able to sit and watch a movie for a long period of time without interruptions. I like being able to focus on things. Most Hollywood movies I'm just not interested in anymore. You know, I'd rather watch something old on my TV. That's kind of where I'm at. Anyway, let's get back to this. So I answered that question. So if there's an opportunity that arises, I'll go see it. Otherwise, I don't really care about seeing it, you know. And she's always wanting to sit on the synth, you know. Should launch it up so I can like goof around and like play on the instruments while I think here. So we need a title. We need to make sure that the character names and stuff are going to be consistent throughout. I want to check the names and just see how I feel about the names, right? Because I used a lot of names, just sort of pulled them out on the live stream. And I may want to think of different names that just are more fitting with what I'm doing in my style and where this fits with my other books. We want our style to be consistent. Because it's in first person, it's really important that the style is very unified across the entirety of the book. And then we want details from the end at the beginning. So there's a couple that I'm thinking of. One is the dagger, which seeks this. Seeks the little boy. We want our character details to be the same. We may want to adjust some. My original idea for Rulin's caretaker was like an older woman, and I'm wanting her to feel more middle-aged and sort of aloof in that sense, rather than like old. You know, she's capable, but she gets closer to like the Dark Lord at the end, and she's unable to function because she's like a priestess. So there's a couple of details there, right? Things like that. And we're going to bring some of those in to what we're doing. Let me pull this over. I can kind of see the chat down here. Okay. And then we're going to clean up sentences. So because this is a short work, we don't have to do like a big structural edit. All we really have to do is just do a through edit, fix sentences, you know, fix characters, fix sentences, all that kind of stuff. We don't really need to do big time edits. So anyway, let's take a look at it. First of all, let's think of a title. We have a guy named Xander. We could just call it Xander. So I'm going to start spitballing some stuff. Right, because that a simple word like Xander could mean a lot to people. You could also do, you know, the Gray Man. You could do Shadow Man. I've used shadows in other titles before. You could do Spectral Heart, which sounds cool. I like the word sorcery. So if you use the word sorcery, that's a big genre trigger word, right? That's a really good genre word. So sorcery. Or sorceress something. Do sorceress blood. We can always change this if we come up with something better. A lot of times I don't have a working title when I start a piece of art. Come up with the title later based on what I pull out of it, you know. I think I like Sorcerer's Blood and Spectral Heart are probably my favorites so far. They hit the genre pretty good, and I can imagine like a good logo that would go with, you know, Sorcerer's Heart, Sorcerer's Blood, something like that. Since we will put this on Vela, what we should probably do is we'll come up with just a square image that will like represent it. And I have like an AI image I could use that would work just fine for that. So we'll just use that. When we design the cover, we could talk about, you know, should you use AI images or not when you design a cover? Personally, I don't think that there's a problem with it versus using stock images. And half the time, if you get something from a stock image website, it's AI now anyway. It's really hard to filter out AI stuff. Versus just having an artist draw a cover. The reason that you probably wouldn't want an artist to draw the cover is that it simply costs too much money. So because of the money, artists are usually a bad option. And there's also a problem with, if it wasn't in this genre, I wouldn't use an artist because it wouldn't actually fit with the genre, believe it or not. If you were writing a thriller, you really shouldn't have an illustrated cover. It won't fit in. People will think that they are seeing the book, that the book has been misplaced, whether it's virtual or it's like on a bookshelf. I know that sounds upsetting to people who care about like old pulp covers, but sorry, if you put an old pulp cover on your book, it probably won't sell. A lot of readers will think that it's old, or they'll think it's misplaced or something like that. So anyway, I think I like Sorcerer's Blood a lot. I think that has a really good trigger. It's got a little bit of horror, a little bit of fantasy, right? You know, so I like Sorcerer's Blood. I think we're going to keep that. That's a good one. Okay, let's take a look at the document itself. Let's pull this over a little bit. So let's see what we're doing. Okay. So let's put the title here. We'll kind of format as we go. Where's our styles? There we go. Normal. Sorcerous Blood by David B. Stewart. Okay. This is not really manuscript format because I'm not planning on like selling this to a magazine or anything. It's kind of an awkward length to put in a magazine. Most of the time they want things that are under 7K. Whereas I try to write things that are closer to 20K, and this is kind of in between. It's an awkward length. So it'll be a good short read to put on Kindle or like as a free reader for the mailing list or something like that. And we'll go from there. Okay, Sorcerer's Blood. And we're gonna reflow the chapters too. So let's take a look. How long is this chapter? Or we'll do each scene, kind of break it down. Let's do 1,000-word chapters. That's a nice round number. 1,000 words is enough for like a plot point to happen. I might want an intro here too. So we could put an intro here. You know, think of like some of the intros Robert E. Howard had for his stories. That would be really cool to have too, I think. Know what I mean? Check out this one. All right. Now I have the other chat up too. All right, sentences. Yes, this is. So we could put I'm going to put a little thing here for like intro. That'll come after this. You know, could make up a little poem. Something cool that's like, you know, into this Conan. You know, that cool intro like Robert E. Howard would do. Yeah. All right, I walk down the gallery, observing more in my peripheral vision. I'll probably don't need more. Each painting a twisted carnal gesture towards the obscene. Each statue a writhing monument of lust frozen in time. So we get this towards the end again. So one of the things I may want to put a note here is... reference the change that at the end of the story. In the end of the hallway. Instead of the end of the hallway from the great dark doors. A place where my fate was already decided. The images to the sides were powerful, sickening, alluring, and I could feel my will to resist the power that awaited me weakening. Instead of hooded man, we're going to say hooded figure. We're going to allude to them not being human. Just a large set of oaken doors carved in shapes. Now, are these oaken or are they iron at the end? Right. So let's take a look at the end and see what we did. I want them to match. Just watch your conservative culture video. If I had the money, I'd be your patron, but for now, I'll have to just give views. That's fine. Yeah. I would do it for free anyway. That's kind of one of my points, right? Is like, most people who try to, like conservatives who try to patronize the arts, like media companies, they're just really are mostly interested in how they can make money from it. It's not really a patronage thing. It's more a business thing, and that's actually a problem because. A lot of times you just are not going to get a big reward for making art. You make art for other reasons. Like emperors of Rome built conveniences for the people of Rome out of their largesse to show that they cared. Not because they were going to make more money by building baths or erecting statues or opening up the palace to the people to come view the wonderful frescoes and art that they paid for. Right? They were for the people, and we've kind of lost that, I feel like. All right, let's see here. Let's find the doors. Our drag is still here. Yeah, these have no way to open them. Carved with a bas relief, a Baroque design. All right, so I'm not sure if I want to bring these details forward. I'm going to have him kind of look away from these details. Of their own accord, one of the doors swung silently inward. You're keeping me company as I'm filling out a similar cheat sheet for a large cast of characters. It feels good to be in that revision phase, and you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah. One thing that I started doing, kind of out of necessity, is I started writing down in my notes like every place and every character. I didn't used to do that years ago, but I started doing it just to keep track of who was doing what, where, and how their name was spelled and who they were, because it could be in some cases 100 pages between the appearance of a character and when I bring them back, you know. So that really helped me out a lot just during the regular writing phase. I'm going to say make this one paragraph. A cool breeze escaped from the portal and chilled the sweat that was collecting on my head and neck, which I had until that point been unaware of. It feels a little awkward. I don't think he sweats though, so I'm taking that out. Because he's kind of half a man, so I think he doesn't sweat. So we're going to take this detail out. Yeah, so right, this detail right here, like why would the door open to what end, right? Yeah. Oh no, he bid him to stand still. Oh yes. So, yeah, so he goes in first. Or sepulcher. Is this an archaic spelling? Sepulcher, E-R or R-E? If there's a spelling that lets me say R-E, I'm going to use R-E. It looks better. There we go. He's not gargantuan. I could have sworn it was RE as well. I'm going to put RE, and then when I do the spell check portion, we'll just... If it's a British spelling, we're keeping the British spelling. In fact, I just prefer British spellings in general. They just... And this sounds weird, but they look better, and they feel more appropriate to read. Desire to Learn says it's Sepulchre RE. So I'm using RE. And if it's like, the Webster says to use ER, I'm like, I don't care about Webster's. Let's do the archaic. How lightly you walk into the lion's den. He wouldn't say that. He'd probably say spider's web sounds better. I don't know if he would say this. I mean, it works, but... He wouldn't say this. The voice was stark and dry, high and brittle and yet omnipresent. I knew that it came from the dais at the center of the immense structure, lit by those strange ochre lamps I had seen before. Or perhaps it was a reflection. Glimpsed. Perhaps it was reflection from the dome high above the dais, which appeared to be clad in tarnished copper that, to my eyes, seemed putrescent. I love that. Interesting. Google has Sepulchre. Merriam-Web has Sepulchre. I'm going with RE, man. I'll go with RE. It's a dumb thing. I do this sometimes because they're like, if you use a spell checker, they're like, you're spelling gray, Grey. I'm like, that's how it sounds. Gray, not gray. Gray would be gray. Gray. Well, I guess you could do it because there's flay versus fly. Anyway, it just looks better with EY. It's like also spelling connection with an X. I don't know if you guys knew you could do that. You can spell connection with an X. So you could use X's in a bunch of places archaically that are kind of fun and weird. Springing up from the dais. Like a cluster of iron teeth. His eyes were human, or else they were made wet and vital by some glamour beyond my ken. But the rest of him had the appearance of a rotting corpse. Or perhaps it was that he was so aged and so wizened by his magic that it impressed upon me the aura of death. Deep creases disturbed a face that ought to have been human, making it more like melted wax over something alien or demonic. Alien probably wouldn't work here. Wooden. Good, said the creature upon the throne. A great, gnarled hand clicked heavy golden rings as it reached down and opened a chest that sat in the Dark Lord's lap. We're wise to obey, Xander. I crept closer and looked into the chest Murdrag held in his satin-covered lap. Now, I'm not sure if I'm spelling this. Murdral. That's actually very close to like Wheel of Time. That's why I was thinking I might want to change this. Right. Yeah, connection. You can also, it's like anxious. You can spell it with an X. I see it sometimes. Like when I read older books, I'm like, oh yeah, interesting spelling. Murdrag. moving subtly beneath the ridges. "You know what this is, eh?" came the crackling voice. I looked up at his face and detected a sardonic smile. "My payment?" He nodded. "Enough to live well for a man like you. And what else?" He laughed and my blood ran cold. A bead of sweat fell from my nose. Now, again, I'm going to get rid of the sweat. I noticed the smell, which, matching the unholy light, was equally insalubrious. Which, comma, matching the unholy. Which, maybe there's 2 commas there, whatever. Whether it was from the Dark Lord or from the box, I did not know. Though I guessed it was from both. On the one hand, the rod of the man who held the box. On the other, the thing inside. You know it, yes? Of course you do. How? I had many methods at my disposal, many techniques, both ancient and covert. How does she live? I'm gonna have a subtle. Close the box. It's a subtle thing because, you know, she lives and will live. But the ritual only holds for a fortnight. Go now, and I will trade this heart for the one that I desire. This heart to you. I did not realize at first that Murdrag had moved. He was now standing tall over me and held forth a sheathed knife with an ebon handle, glittering with copper details. I took it and drew it out a finger width. The blade was no less black than the handle, and though it had the subtle sheen of malachite, I knew it would be deadly sharp and strong as normal steel. Yeah, betwixt, I like hither. I use hither a lot. I use it in my regular speech, by the way. I say, come hither. Hither and yon. All right. I kneeled and held the blade to my chest. What's your top-selling book? I watched a couple of old ratings go up and down over the years. For a while, it was Voices of the Void. Looks like he's prolific. So the best-selling book is City of Silver. So in terms of units... So, okay, let's break it down. In terms of units sold for money, it's City of Silver. In terms of units moved free and for money, it's actually Prophet of the Godseed. But Prophet of the Godseed, despite selling thousands of copies, only has like 10 reviews, which means that like people just didn't like it. But it's been number one. It's actually technically been a number one bestseller. It went to number one randomly last year, and I sold like hundreds of copies in one day. I don't know why, but it just did that. It was like, whoa. Anyway, but like no one ever comments on it or mentions it. It's kind of like my avatar. It's like people buy it, they don't read it, they don't talk about it. So yeah, I think so. City of Silver is my best seller for money. The biggest money maker is probably Keys to Prolific Creativity, because it sells a lot and it continues to sell, and then it's higher priced than City of Silver. It's $5 or something instead of one. I think City of Silver is like a 99-cent book, so it's easy to sell. You could sell like more copies with a 99-cent book for sure. But because that's number one in a series, I'm going to have another 3 books to that series, hopefully at some point here. They're written. They just need to be rewritten and revised, because I wrote them like 10 years ago when I sucked at this. So they got to be fixed. But anyway, they're, you want your first book in the series to have a low cost entry point, and then the rest of them can be higher. 99 cents, $2.99, $4.99 on out. So the rest of them will sell through. So you want people to buy through the series. It's a basic business thing. I kneeled and held the blade. I kneeled and held the blade to my chest. As you bid, I shall do. A quaver had finally slipped into my voice. It seemed to amuse the Dark Lord, who chuckled softly in response, and it was like the creaking of old rafters in a storm, reverberating under the ancient and sickly dome. He held forth a piece of paper, and I took it with trembling hands. I know you shall. Do not waste your time. Remember that even the strongest magic fades. I rose and turned, trying not to run on my way back to the Gallery of Sin, lest I angered the horror behind me. A heart for a heart. This man must die, so that my precious Turilla could be saved. Or could live. Just say could live. Simpler. Better. I'm going to get rid of this. All right. So this will be number 2. Scene number 2. City of Silver starts the series. Right. Yeah. It's first of Moonsong. Or is there a book to read before that one? Moonsong. The whole Moonsong series is kind of an alternate super future of Water of Awakening. It's kind of interesting. But I wrote those before that. Number 1. Yeah. I don't think it's related. It is related to the Eternal Dream. Yeah. It takes place way in the future. Takes place way in the future. A lot of the same places are there. It's in the same continent, just like far in the future. I huddled against the boathouse on the barge, a rough shack-like structure protruding from the deck like a great rotting wart. The river rushed under me, bubbling and gurgling in the opposite direction from the wind, and I couldn't help but feel twisted beneath these two extremes, like a ring of smoke caught between the draft of the stove and the breath of the smoker. The oxen necessary for the return journey to Solborg stirred, and the barge rocked. The captain, a toothless man who was old at 40, griped, griped in whatever dialect he spoke to himself, and whipped the oxen with a short thong. One gave a plaintive moo, but they looked disinclined to respond. Moo is an onomatopoeia, so you should probably do it in italics. You don't have to, but you can, because it's an onomatopoeia. Moo, like meow or nyan. I need to know I'd kill your Parthenax or not in Skyrim. I don't remember what I did last time I had to deal with him. I don't remember if I killed him or not. I think I might have turned on the blades. I don't remember what I did. I think I didn't kill him. I think I was like, nah, I'm not killing him. He's a cool dragon. I want him to be my friend. They looked disinclined to respond to the whip and continued turning about as if hoping to jump off the barge and escape and become wild Tauruses again. It's pointless whipping an ox, I said from my shadowy reclination. Oxen aren't horses. The old boatman ignored me, cursed a few more times as he walked around his ox team, and then went back inside his hovel of a boathouse. I looked up at the sun, hazy and indistinct in the autumn sky, blotted with thin clouds, then back at the dagger Murdrag had handed me. Its ebon blade drank the sun like a void. There was not even the sheen of a horseshoe to its surface. It was a black that was as dark as night. Rippled sheen of a horseshoe. The senses of my birth and my profession told me, as I ran my fingers along a groove in the fuller, that it was indeed an ebon blade like the one spoken of in old tales, a dagger attuned to a single living person, designed to cut out a heart and leave it living, or to suck out the soul. I'll get rid of that H. I might get rid of Murdrag. It's too close to Murdral for me. It's pointless whipping an ox. Could apply to my country fellas. Yeah, I don't know if it's actually not pointless to whip an ox. But it's actually not pointless to whip an ox. I might change that. Because the oxen will just go forward. Right. Put that. Since Murdrag had spoken of the trade, a heart for a heart, I assumed it was the former. All right, let's think of names again, because I'm thinking I don't like Murdrag because it's too close to Murdral. That's all. I think Hardwick suggested it, but I think it's a little too close to Murdral. Right, which is like a creature, kind of a half-man creature from Wheel of Time. He has they have no eyes and stuff. They're kind of creepy. You have any favorite alternatives for corridor, hallway? I'm in space. Corridor, hallway, gallery. I like gallery. Gallery works. Passage, depending on the context. Tunnel, there's lots of things, but gallery's probably a good alternative. Let's do something with an M though. Instead of Murdrag, we'll do let's think of something Germanic. Get a German sounding name in here because it's in a German area. Say I like Mothir, or we could do instead of Murdrag, Mogthir. I like Mogthir. Mog. Dragmir. Dragmir's good. I like Mogthir. I mean, you should do it with like a cool. We could do it with like a cool different character, but we'll anglicize it. Mogthir, so it has a little bit more Norse sound to it. I like Mogthir. So I'm gonna muse on that as I go, and I could just replace them all with like find and replace later. Ruland. I had a name, and that was apparently all I needed. Yes, let's put that up there. You wouldn't write it on a piece of paper. That's dumb. I had a name, and it was apparently all I needed, or at least all the tyrant thought I deserved. I would cut out his heart, procedure I had done before, though not with such evil accoutrements, and trade it for the still living heart of my beloved Tyrilla. So we're repeating some information that we have earlier. But we kind of want to re-emphasize Tyrilla, right? Let's cut this out. It was Murdrag's great cunning that enslaved me, for I was enslaved by Tyrilla, both formally and by my own heart, and our forbidden union would be enough to bury her in the remains of Solborg's bloodthirsty nobility. The evil king knew, however secret we kept our union, and I knew I must obey him. Tyrilla. Even now my memory of her is as fresh as a painting on the wall, both perpetual in its detail and drawn to show the person within. She was beauty defined as if she was beauty itself, the concept alive rather than an imitation of it, like so many things in the world that is. Her hair was gold, like the ring she wore. Let's remember this, right? We want her to have gold hair, so we want that to be we want to make sure we have that at the end. So let's just hop over to the end, and we'll find Tyrilla. Let's go. There she is. Where is she? Put some details in. There, we're on number 2. Mood. Even now, my memory of her is as fresh as a painting on the wall. Her hair was gold like the ring she wore, the chains draped around her neck, holding that precious locket that her graceful fingers often found absent-mindedly. So, her eyes were such a blue, rare... I don't know what I was saying here. Moon, all right. Gotta use that M dash. Gaze at her slender body drawn up from the ground like a long paint stroke by a master. Here thick and warm, and here narrow and definite, but always a graceful mingling of perfect curves harmonious to the whole. The tragedy of her peers is that they could only perceive a shadow of that carnal sensuality that was Tyrilla, hidden by clothes that hinted at the glory of what was beneath. My great tragedy... Let's see if we go another word for tragedy. No, it's tragedy here. My great sadness. For such beauty once viewed and experienced, no request from it. That's... And I would do anything to preserve her. Somewhere in the distance, Strandham loomed. No, we're in Strandham, not Fisker Hall. Thank you. Fisker Hall's on the coast. Forgetting my own lands. Where is it? Let's start here, go up. Strandham. There we go. There we go. And in my mind loomed the unpleasantness of my appointed task, but larger still loomed Tyrilla, and I was flooded with the love of her. Silently I cursed the king in my own ugly made-up tongue, just as the toothless man cursed his bored oxen. Like his guttural objections, I knew my curses were impotent, but I spoke them into the void anyway, and thanked Grim that the old man didn't seem to care to talk to me. Strandham was like an old, scarred, a tack dog that had been bathed and powdered for a pompous lord. It was once a fishing village, made into a fortress by people long forgotten in the petty kingdoms because of its location between the hinterlands of Solberg and the rich northern coast. It had overspilled its bounds and had been burned to the ground half a dozen times, and each time rebuilt with as much reuse of foundations and salvaged materials and as little effort as possible. But being in an important place, it had naturally grown into its own fief, and then its own small princedom as time went on. The lords, of whom the current despot Gunwald was the 10th in line, wanted their capital, of mostly empty steppes and countryside, to impress others of their... wanted the capital of their land. Domain. Of mostly empty steppes and countryside, to impress others of their rank, so they had built anew palaces of small stature and expensive facades. The effect of seeing them leaning above all the simple expanse of the city on the Capitol Hill below the moss-covered castle was almost nauseating. Seeing them on the Capitol Hill. Perhaps that was why I had never settled there, and opted for the older, and though more austere, also more refined, Solberg as my final place of attachment. This time, when I saw the hovels and hamlets, with the high town crooning above, I laughed at the sentiment. There was only one reason I was loyal to Solberg, and that was the lady whose heart lay beating in a box at the side of the king. I need to go to put the baby to sleep. God bless you. It's always a treat getting to watch the live streams. Good night, everyone. Thank you. The great benefit to the chaos of a place like Strandham was that a man like me might go unnoticed and unremembered. People already have a hard time remembering me or catching me in a crowd. When the crowd is as dirty and heterogeneous as the knaves that inhabited Strandham, I was practically invisible. The knife I held would lead me to my target, its resonance growing as I grew closer, but the city was large. I hopped off the raft to the dock as it approached the landing, not looking back at the old man or bothering to give him a spare coin as gratuity. By the next time he thought of me, if he ever did, it would likely be a relief to be rid of me. That is what I usually heard from others, and Torilla especially, when she would cheerfully debrief me on whatever dirty task I had dared for her. There was a sparse wood between the docks and the first hamlets, a collection of hovels leaning over an ancient road that was now more moss and mud than cobbles. A few women sat in the midday sun on the corner, and to what end I can only guess, for they held no wares. I passed them by and headed up the road for the first lines of the city, always staying to the shadows below the overhanging eaves and leanings. Over leaves and the leaning, depressed trees that grew between the houses. Silently, I fingered the dagger held within my jacket, and I could subtly sense it growing in malice. I was walking in the right direction. Near the first gatehouse, which sat on a rocky slope facing southwest, I paused and caught the arm of a man pushing cabbages in a wheelbarrow. He seemed to freeze at my touch and looked around before turning his eyes to me askance. "What is it?" he said with a trembling voice. "I am looking for..." What was I looking for? A boy? A man? "A sojourner from Solberg." "A boy?" "Perhaps. He is in the city. Are there any foreigners there?" I held his eye for a long time, searching in their dark, hazy depths. Then I released him. "A boy and a woman," I said. Now he wouldn't know that it's a woman. Let me see, how many words is this? 788. Okay, good. I think we'll break these up a little bit, you know. Here we go. Go about your business and don't worry about foreigners. It was as good as I could expect. He would forget about me soon, as scared as he was. The spell would fade like a dream. There was a guard at the gatehouse, a fat man in a dirty gambeson with a collection chest for tariffs. I quietly slipped past him, passing behind him and through the raised portcullis to the inner city. What a reek it had. Animal and human waste assaulted my nostrils, and I knew why, for the open sewers of the city ran to the southern gate and out to the fens beyond. But it had been dry of late, and things were beginning to slow down and pile up. The whole place needed a good washing. Horses and wagons moved through the narrow avenues, mostly heading out to the city and its markets, and I was walking the wrong way. I kept an eye to my left, watching to see any reaction from a face, but they paid me no mind. I held the spell in my mind, and smiled darkly at its workings, though I walked cautiously. If I bumped into somebody, my focus would break and they would know me. I turned into an alley where a withered oak still clung to life and paused to collect my wits. I felt the thrumming of the dagger. A boy and a woman is what the man thought. A boy. My mind immediately went to Ruland, the old king of Solborg. Well, we have this, right? Ruland is not the king. What did I name him? See, this is why I write notes. Melchior. All right. Melchior, the old king of Solborg. When Murdrag had murdered his brother, he had also ruthlessly terminated all the threads of his issue. But perhaps there were more. Some who fled, who he would... Some might have fled, who he would rather not reveal lest it stir up some idea of rebellion. In the gutted ability. It made sense. Where would such an issue stay? The options seemed limited. Either he would be in the company of the king as a hostage or guest, or else sequestered in some finer place out of the way. No hovels for royal sons. For a royal son, even a bastard. I decided to make for the Capitol Hill and see where the dagger led me. Capitol Hill. Hightown was like a breath of fresh air after coming up from the rapids of a river. The problem was that I was more a fish than a man, and to me the cleanest streets and great marble facades of the gentry were poison. I have means of not being noticed. Some are more mundane than others. I don't look like an interesting person, and that quality is emphasized when I am in a crowd. Rather than emphasized. Heightened. Because there's no emphasis, right? Because he would blend into the crowd. Drab clothes get lost even in a sea of color. When you wear nothing special, you become like the stones, or like a beggar, which to a rich man is practically the same thing. The problem with nice Aries is that I'm not a nice person. Not in deed, nor in appearance, which makes my patronage by Chirilla the more acutely strange. Where I would be a rock in the hamlets, I was a dirt smudge in clean streets, something to be wiped away. But I had more than mundane methods, as I mentioned. Perhaps you have picked up on it, but my skills are not limited to the blade, or to infiltration, or the acrobatics that might entail. I have an affinity for magic, of a certain variety familiar to me and men like me. I wear a brown cloak, and I walk quietly. But when I wish, I can wear a cloak of illusion and walk out of the bounds of this world. It can be taxing, but I had little choice. The dagger thrummed against my breast, begging me to go thither, to the well-manicured estates of the barbarous Strandham elite. The streets were still full of dung, and by all perception I was dung, a thing to be turned away from. Coachmen and stewards looked away from me as I passed beneath. Turned away from. I wonder if I could say that better. Thing to be avoided. Coachmen and stewards looked away from me as I passed beneath the waving afternoon leaves, letting the dagger guide me wordlessly. I found it in the northern corner of a cobbled street. It faced the ruins of an old battlement, and beyond that, the outer wall of the castle. But it was a comely and even modern house, with a tile roof held up by a row of decorative columns. A revival of the style of the ancients was in vogue in the south, perhaps half a century past, and was now finally reaching the petty kingdoms. I almost laughed looking at it, for it was the architectural equivalent of a child's scratched charcoal drawing, a silly imitation of the precision, the depth, the beauty, the grandeur of what was, long before men built the little fortresses we now call castles, and the refuse piles they call cities. How did I know this vision? I pondered the curiosity of my knowledge even then, and now it is something that I cannot easily explain, save for that I knew what real fluted columns were supposed to look like. I looked up through the overlapping green leaves of a great oak, nearly hugging the overbuilt house, a green that was somehow less green than it once was. No matter my aptitude, I would tire of using magic, and it had its limits. The sun would unmake me, as would the wakeful house, for even then I could hear the voices of busy work within. The knife knew, and its will was unmistakable, and I wanted now to obey it swiftly, but I also knew that I must escape the city as well as perform my task. Now, this is a little bit of a run-on. I also knew. I like this. I knew also. I like reversing things. I knew also that I must escape the city as well as perform my task. Otherwise, I could never exchange the heart of my victim for that of my love. I decided to explore the ruined wall that stood between the court of fine houses and the castle, and find some nook to rest until the mountains in the west ate the sun. I found one not too far off, a makeshift cave of the fallen wall. It looked out on a wide section of the moat that encircled the castle. A fisherman pushed himself about on a raft using a large pole, dropping a line here and there. He took no notice of me as I lay in the shadows, and so I allowed my mind to release the flows of magic, and I relaxed, then fell into a hazy sleep as he worked to pull onto his simple craft an ugly catfish. It would probably not taste good, considering the toilets of the outer wall emptied into the moat, outer ward. But he, like me, did what was necessary, and as I drifted off I considered that I admired the little bare-chested brown man. Night had settled into the hollows of the ruined wall when I came to, though twilight clung to the western sky, and the city to the south held the hue of dying firelight beneath the high-colored clouds. Instead of clouds of gnats, we have clouds and clouds. We got to use a different word. Swarms of gnats hovered over the water, seeking some bloodied victim yet to retreat to the calm of its nocturnal hideaway. Thankfully, they passed me by. There's a hint. It's not quite alive. I emerged from my nook and looked around. The house where the knife bade me go was already alight with lamps behind thin curtains in a few rooms. It would not be long before the darkness was total and the easy rest of the damned settled upon the home's occupants. As expected, a man approached the front door from the south, wearing a heavy gambeson, as I expected. wearing a heavy gambeson and carrying a large, studded club. A short sword was belted to his left hip, and he wore a cap of iron. A mercenary, of course, which lent credence to my suspicion that my target was a person of some real importance. I moved silently to the shadow of the twisting oak and held myself still amidst its branches. Again I waited, watching the colors fade. Watching the colors fade to purple and finally the grays and blacks of true night. Beneath the canopy the stars were invisible, and the waning moon had not yet risen. The light of the firmament barely illuminated the grass and trees, but I could see by virtue of my more magical skills. Muffling my steps, I emerged from the tree and stepped swiftly but calmly across the overgrown lawn into the edge of the house. In the distance I could hear the faint howl of some dog, and another answered it. The guard showed no notice. He was now sitting on a stool just inside the eaves of the house, bathed in shadow. I watched as he lit a pipe. Remembering an old trick of my master's, I sent out a noise to the guard, and he sprang up, looking intently. At a cluster of mustard bushes beside the street. He stepped out from the eaves, and I jumped over a wooden rail and onto the front door. It was, of course, locked from the outside. I said an old word and heard the pins tumble. I tried the knob and a hoary brass thing of some ancient make, but the lock had not slipped. Dirty or dingy. But the lock had not slipped. With a sigh, I stepped backward and allowed the guard to return. I drew from my belt my favorite rondel. It was not the dagger Murdrag had given me, for that one would harm only one person to its deadly stillness. The guard sat again, and with annoyance worked at his nearly cold pipe. I slid behind him and struck. So I'm assuming he has like a rondel dagger and also a short sword and a club, right? If you strike a man in the right way, he will not make a sound when he dies. I struck right, but the man's armor was thicker than I anticipated and resisted the stiff blade. My left arm was on his neck, but even crushing it, he cried aloud. I cast another muffling spell and hoped it was enough. With my knee, I slammed the butt of the dagger and it punched through. Separating ribs and piercing the guard's lung. He gasped, and I drew the weapon out and struck again. He kicked, but as I held him down, the life drained from him. The interchange disturbed me. I had planned on moving silently to my target, but chance now entered into the game. So one thing I might consider is having him not kill this guy. So I'm going to put a note here, and I'm going to think about it. So I have a little, make a comment. And the reason is, if we are killing people, it makes it a little harder for both him to be sympathetic, but also for the characters, Ruland and the woman, to care about him in some way. Right? I'll finish this up. The interchange disturbed me. Now let me see how much I've written. Yes, okay, right. This is about 800 words. So I'll try to keep things to about 1,000. I would have to hope nobody would call this night and see the dead man. I pulled him as best I could to the side where his body might be obscured by a sunken maple tree beside the porch. Whatever held the lock now demanded my attention. I wiped my hands on a dry spot of cloth on the dead man's armor. They were sticky and tense. With an effort, I clenched them and then took out my thieves' tools. The lock was easy enough to open, though my expertise was less than others because of skills with magic. Because of my skills. Whatever had held the pins was some spell, though it was subtle enough I could not feel it with my extra senses. I entered the house. It was black inside, and my focused vision revealed a narrow staircase. I went up it directly, keeping up the bubble of muffled sound I maintained for such occasions. I took out the black knife and let it vibrate and thrum. As I stepped up the stairs, it began verily to sing with pleasure, and I could even feel, though it may have been some trick of the moment, a heartbeat. Was it a living thing? Yes, I pondered this even as I stepped slowly forward. It does not do to dwell too much in anticipation of a murder. Best to consider other things. This, too, I wondered at. There was a closed bedroom. I paused for a moment and dropped my bubble of concealment. My sharp senses listened for anything. I heard the sound of a single person sleeping within. I put the muffling spell back up and opened the door. It was a sparse but large room, with a small bed at one end near the window. I hadn't considered until that moment that I might be killing a child. No, that's not true. As I stepped through the darkened doorway and toward the window, illuminated with the hint of starlight beyond, I considered that I had not yet done this sort of deed before. Killing the guard had clearly unnerved me. Why could I recall no prior experience? Why could I suddenly? I knew what to do. In my mind, I could see myself severing the carotid artery and holding down the victim as life drained from him. I could see the knife working almost of its own will, splitting the chest and rib cage, cutting now. Now, he wouldn't actually cut this. He wouldn't do this. Yeah, we want to do the living heart. I'm going to have him, pinching. I could see the knife working on of its own will, splitting the chest and rib cage, cutting the now. Pulsing. Remember, I had no prior memory of anything similar. It was as if something had stripped me of my memories, and only faintly could I remember why I had come here to begin with. A pale image of Torilla flitted across my mind's eye, banishing the horrible spectacle I was about to act out. Perhaps not just the lock had been warded, and I had foolishly and arrogantly walked into something older and more powerful. These thoughts would have held any man back from the despicable bloodletting, made him hesitate on the precipice of the eternal dark of murder, but the knife now shouted in my hand. It did not encourage or beg, but demanded to be whetted. In my bewildered and self-contemplative state, I could not resist. It was a young boy, perhaps 10, though he looked cherub-like in the pale silver light. My hand trembled, but the blade urged me onward, its magic coursing into my very mind. At that moment, something snapped. I felt a wave of fear wash over me, and my hand, ready for the killing strike, wavered. The boy's eyes opened, and he regarded me almost calmly. My hand froze, urged onward by its will, a will more powerful than my own, yet held back by that fragile thread of humanity that was my own desire. And suddenly, staring into the cherubic face— did I use cherubic already? cherub-like, cherubic. Just use pure. And I gained enough of myself. I realized there was somebody at the door when the bubble of silence shattered around me. The contest between wills, turned aside at the last moment, failed. I turned and dashed at the figure, a back silhouette framed with an otherworldly light. I obeyed the pulsing void within me and stabbed. I struck flesh, but it was a fleeting resistance. The black blade wanted the blood of only one, and even as I moved in ways practiced 1,000 times to deliver death, I faltered. The figure struck me in the head with a quarterstaff it held in its right hand, and I fell back. The blow barely registered, and within a moment I was back on my feet. Before I could attack again, I felt myself falling back to the floor. My muscles had lost control. My joints had lost their strength and flopped about like reeds in a stiff wind. The dagger dropped from my hands, and with it went all my thoughts for both my victim and my paramour. I twitched. The figure in the window stepped toward the light of the figure in the doorway. Stepped toward the light of the window, and I beheld that it was a woman, aged and yet bent only by the wound I had given her. And so I kind of don't want her to be aged. My eyes were all I could move by my own desire. My limbs were loose ropes, and I would have seen neither figure if my head did not happen to land on the floor at the angle it did. "Are you all right?" said the boy. I could not answer. I realized that, though he stared at me, he was speaking to the woman. "I am hurt, but it is not lethal. Do not worry about me. Did he reach you?" "He did, but he did not strike." The boy's eyes were cold as he regarded me. "You see him fully?" "I do." "You are growing stronger. What did you do to hold him fast?" "Nothing that I know of. I merely looked at him. He had a strange expression on his face, as if he were struggling with something." "Get me that knife." The boy bent down and retrieved the black dagger my master had given me. Carefully, he handed it to the woman. She snapped her fingers, and a lamp came to life on a stand behind her. A clever bit of craftsmanship. She gripped it and frowned. "Attuned to your blood." "It is my uncle, then." "I have no doubt. Someone has been talking, and he thought enough to imbue such an implement with his own life force, diminished as it is. He thus still considers you a threat." "What do we do with him?" "Him?" The woman raised her eyebrows. "Can you really call that a him?" The The boy was pointing at me. Now, I might put a chapter break in here. Let's see. Yeah, I want a chapter break in here somewhere. Maybe about here. All right, so we're going to put chapter 6 here. And we will go heading 1. All right, boom. Him. Looks like a man, does it not? Perhaps only to us. It was a man once, or pieces of one. I could not speak. I moved my lips. I urged air to part them. He is trying to speak, I think, the boy said. He bent down to listen. It is a half-man, the woman said. It is likely that he cannot speak that way. What is a half-man? A shadow walker, an abomination of some darker cults. Old magic, very strong and very costly. He is here and in the mist realm both, half a soul bound to a body. The doorman likely could not see him. But he still tripped your wards? Just enough for me to notice. If he had been aware of them, he might have slipped past them or dispelled them. Are you sure he's a half-man? Check his heart. Don't worry, he cannot move now. The boy bent over me, and I could see that, though he was very young, a light of wisdom was in his eyes, and he certainly had the spark. Let's get rid of very. Even as I was then, I could sense it. He pushed my body over. He seems too light. That is part of it. The boy put his ear to my chest. It felt exceptionally warm. I hear nothing, he said after a moment. You believe me now, Ruland? I never disbelieve you, Hestia. Again, I think he tries to speak. Can you hear? A little. Tell me, stranger, do you have a name? I moved to say Xander, but no sound escaped my lips. He says he is Xander. Who sent you to kill me? Oh, I don't think you need ask that. I wonder if he knows what he is. Very well. Did you know that you are a half-man? Half-man? I grew angry. I was not half of anything. They were mistaking my latent talents for some sort of Dryson sorcery. I had heard tales of it before, the making of liches and other sorts of beings, but it was absurd, or so I thought. Not a good descriptor here. Repugnant. Repugnant. What's up, Brian? He says he is not a half-man. Hestia laughed. Of course, he is confused. Ask him if he remembers where he was born. The boy didn't ask me. I grew angry again, partially because it seemed these two, mages I concluded, were reading my mind. The other half of me was angry at the insinuation, then angry because... Then let's do furious. As the woman suggested, I could not remember where I was born. Let's do recall. Does any man remember that? You don't remember being born, of course, she said, as if sensing my feelings. But most people Yeah, most people remember being a child. You cannot, I reckon, or else the memories are so few and so fragmented they make no sense. She snapped her fingers again, and I felt my limbs move. What are you doing? The boy said. Something you said got me wondering. He held back, you said, not because you cast the spell, but because he willed it. I wonder how much of himself... I'm going to let you cook. I wonder how much of himself he has left in there. Can you talk like a man, Xander? I talk like one because I am one, I said. Little italics there. See, Ruland, said Hestia, listen with your ears, not your spirit. Speak again, Xander. Who are you two? I said in bewilderment. It sounds so quiet, the boy said. It is like an echo. Think of how he is to someone without your senses, a person who is half there. This will be Hestia. And have her do something. Think of how he is to someone without your senses, a person who is half there, half missing. A movement in the shadows. They were used as assassins of old, and it seems Murdrag has brought back this practice, luckily to moot effect. I remained silent at this remark, for it seemed impossible to me. Perhaps it seems impossible to you, too. For how could I be conscious and be such a being? I had memories and thoughts, but as I considered the words, an unease grew within me. I was living in the moment, I thought, because of my skills and my training, and I realized I could not recall ever having been taught. And I didn't know who trained me. I didn't know who had reared me. All I could think of was Torilla, but where had I met her? Who was she? How long had she been my lover? If I was a thrall, who sold me to her? I realized I could not even recall the date or the year. My mind was an empty space hemmed by actions and talents I could not account for, and that space was only sparsely filled by explanations. I wondered whether those explanations were of my own making or another's. Am I really a half-man? Yes, Hestia answered immediately, but you still hold some part of your humanity. Whatever and whoever you walk here and in the land of the dead at once. You are an echo of a man. The truth of it hit me, and I clutched my chest. I almost want to say clutch my breast. Did I have a heart, or was it beating a ghostly cadence in Niflheim, or some other dark realm that the spirits of the dead travel in their journey, seeking a return to the dreamer? What do we do with him? Said the boy. Ah, that is the problem. We can offer him release from his body, but to what end? Half of his soul is bound here. He has a mind and a will, and he speaks. Yes, he does. Tell me, assassin, what stopped you from cutting out the heart of young Ruland? I tried breathing, and the feeling was uncanny. I thought he looked too innocent to kill. I thought I had killed a child before, but I couldn't remember anything. She nodded. Her light hair fell around her face, and Ruland caught her and guided her into a nearby chair. I will tell you what I think is true. You were made by Murdrag, or else purchased by him, and put to work, but inside you survives some memory, some small thing perhaps that remains human, and to that end you have your own will. You are yourself, though you cannot remember it. The usurper is not as skilled as he thinks. I believe there is a way you could be made whole. Murdrag will have kept some part of the ritual to bind you to this realm, but maybe not. If not, would you have us slay you so that you could at least have a chance at release? I pondered this. I would be whole, but not for my own sake. For one I love, but Murdrag has her. The plot thickens. But that is well. How do you intend to get her back? By providing the heart of the boy. Yes, but you didn't do that. Then I don't know. You could kill Murdrag, Ruland said. Would you kill the man who enslaved you? I'm trying to think of like Mogthyr. I like Mogthyr better. It's starting to grow on me. If he really did so. Well, since you can think, Hestia said, you must consider whether he did. Either way, do you think he deserves death, holding your loved one as hostage? Yes. Perhaps you can use him, Rulin. This may be the opportunity we have hoped for since your father delivered you into my care. The same nature that makes him so ethereal here will work against his master now that he has free will. Are you suggesting we hire a half-man? Can anyone do such a thing? I'm suggesting you recruit him. What could we offer him exactly? He must have life before money matters to him. What about the ritual? Do we have the knowledge? To reverse it, Hestia's still in visible pain smiled. I believe so. But we must first discern the nature of this thraldom, or attempted thraldom. I have studied these things, not out of evil desire, mind you, youthful curiosity and a life too full of silence. Very well, Rulin turned back to regard me. I will offer you this, Sander. You will take me to your king, and you will dispose of him. I will then have Hestia undo the spell that binds you, either giving you life or death. All right, so we need to actually bring in a couple of details here. Because you might have to come too. You will take me to your king. I will offer you this, Sander. You will take me to your king, and you will dispose of him. I will then have Hestia undo the spell that binds you, either giving you life or death. And what of Murdrag's captive? My words faltered. I can only guarantee the same, Hestia said. Life or death according to what is right. It is better to die than to live a half-life. Or so I have assumed. What do you think? I paused. There was thought in me. I had a voice, and I felt it was mine, echoing through the empty corridors of my mind. Yet for every door I opened, I found only empty space and more echoes, half-memories of things that I could not say were real. Did I enjoy being alive? Would I prefer death? I cannot remember what life is, I said at last. But half-life, can you think of the now? What do I compare it to? I don't like my own voice going in circles. Then what do you say? What if I refuse? Then we find a way to release you now. An end, or a chance at a beginning, or a chance to remember too. What do you say? Will you kill the bringer of your tragedy? My voice was swift, darting through the empty space into my lips to answer, I will kill him. Is there an oath that would bind a half-man? Rulin said. Does he respect the gods or even know who they are? The boy turned to regard me, and he seemed old beyond his years. What god do you know? Grim. The child actually laughed. Verbis, then, fitting. Why? Poetry and death, Sander. But that you remember him is good enough. Swear, then, said Hestia, and I will bind it so. By Grim, god of words and the dead, I will kill Murdrag if he will attempt to restore me. Hestia laid a hand on my head. It felt hot, and I realized suddenly wet with blood. With that blood from the wound I gave her, she drew something, but I could not see what. Now we shall see you, and we will see whether oaths hold shadow men. I must attend to my own injuries now, or I will be useless. Rulin turned to her and bent down, the reality of her injury striking his face with a grimace. Let's do wound. Seeing the word injury a lot. He placed his hand on her side where I had struck her. You must rest. Forgive me for not seeing how bad it was. We had other concerns. Do not worry too much. I do not need rest, but wake me in the light. I do need rest. She flicked a hand at me, and I went limp once again. Forgive me for not trusting you or my own powers just yet. In the light, when the shadow recedes, we will see how you are. All right. I'm out of time for today. We will finish the rest of this next time. Either next week or Sunday. Just kind of bringing in the right little details. All right, we have to set up that Rulin really needs to go soon. I might add in one little thing here. Right. Which is right here. I know it is dangerous, but clearly we are not safe in hiding. All right. I think that's it. Everybody have a good night. We'll pick this back up. This would be what, 7? 7. So 7, they're going there. This one, they get there. 8 is the end. So this one's going to have to be broken up into like a bunch of different chapters. Because it's like, how many words here? I'm trying to keep them kind of limited. It's 6,000 straight words. It's a 6,000 word scene. So we'll break that up into like 6 chapters, and the whole thing will end up being about 15 chapters. 15 little chapters. It'll be good. All right. So that's it. I will see you guys next time. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I'm going to link Brian's website because he's in chat. Listen, a rising tide lifts all boats. And I'll link the Patreon. And people were talking about Moonsong in the chat. You'll get I think I have all 3 of them are actually free if you're on the Patreon this month. Because I did 1 and then 2 and then book 3 this month. So you get kind of 3 for 1 for this month. You get all 3 of those, which is cool. So anyway, I'll see you guys next time. Have a great, great day. Let me find some music somewhere. Put on. I always end with music. All right, we'll just pick one randomly. Let's do this one. It'll be an ad first. Ads. All right. All right, guys, take it easy, and I'll see you all next time.